In December 2020, before the UK's latest lockdown hit, the ACE programme invited me to one of their training sessions at the Oval. There, as part of our partnership with the Cricket Supporters Association's Every Cricket Fan initiative, I spoke to the programme's chair, England international, Surrey Director of Women's Cricket and broadcaster, Ebony Rainford-Brent. I started by asking Ebony to outline the nature and scale of the problem that ACE exists to solve.
Just to give you some stats, which I've mentioned a few times, but there's been a 75% decrease in players, which is huge. You know, you think about the interest from the West Indian community and the British, say West Indian community and Black British community, 70s, 80s, earlier. That's a big drop. Participation numbers around the 1% or less, which, you know, it needs to be significantly higher. And then when you look at the game as a whole, you take areas like London and what's around us, you know, the numbers are really, really sad, but it's sad in the sense that it's sad that we haven't engaged, but also the opportunities there that we know that if we turn things around, we put investment, the kids, the young people want to be engaged. So yeah, big problem. I'm not going to pretend that we're biting off something that's easy to do, but what we have seen is a bit of investment, a bit of connection, and we can make a difference.
To get that investment, Ebony went to Surrey with her plans for the programme. But how long did it take to get Surrey to buy in?
Do you know what? It was the first time with my existing chief exec that we had this conversation, and it was a simple, let's do something. I think there's a few things that were different. Jofra Archer at the World Cup final and his impact, and also knowing there was a role model that we could leverage off almost for the next 10 years. I think it helped create questions. Why are we not seeing more players from the community come through? Then the celebration around the World Cup final here at the Oval, actually, there were a lot of kids who were inspired by that and came down and met some of the players. I think they just got us asking questions. So when we sat down, it was a let's do something. But I think the piece that's changed is knowing that him and Sophia in the England side could be playing for 10 years and having that visibility. Chris Jordan, with the success he's having in the white ball setup, has made us go, look, the inspiration piece is there, the visibility is there. I think we've got to do something. If we don't do it now, when are we going to do it?
Speaking of timing, what impact did the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement have on ACE?
What's been massive about the Black Lives Matter movement, in specific to the programme in this summer, is that I think prior to, you know, earlier in the summer when I think a lot of people were really excited for the programme, then you could be doing something different. But I don't think people were prepared to really examine the question. I don't think there was a huge amount of accountability or questions being asked as to why this community and other communities as well aren't progressing through our game. So what BLM has done, or you know, I know people get funny about it, but the movement specifically has done is it's created conversations, it's created questions of accountability, it's created questions around action, like actually what are we doing in this space? And you know, I suppose for ACE it's accelerated a lot for us as an organisation, because we started with, you know, high hopes of doing some engagement, but now actually the conversations are being wider and how we can work with others. So, you know, I think what people can't do now is avoid the realities anymore of the lack of action in this space. And I think when you have a global movement like that, where people are marching around the world saying, look, you cannot ignore these issues or these opportunities anymore. And it can be as simple as lack of access through to what we saw in America, the extremes there. So it's helped accelerate the conversation in a way that we never would have imagined. And I think therefore it's time to really capitalise on the momentum.
Is that momentum sufficient to get England's cricketing authorities to treat inclusion as necessary rather than nice to have?
I think the pressure is there now from the media because of the year that we had, where there was such a kind of a break in what was happening. There wasn't as much international cricket or domestic cricket, and the media started asking a lot of questions. I think that's created a lot more pressure, more questions about accountability, responsibility. So I think first and foremost there's that, but what the narrative I want to push is, and the reason why I suppose ACE has it, is there's value and there's talent in these communities. It's not a nice thing to do because it's a nice thing to do. Diversifying types of people into environments makes it stronger. creating opportunities for your local community is really important, and there's a source of value there. So this sort of nice to do charity thing isn't for me what it's about, and I hope that the authorities, which I believe they're starting to realise, I think first and foremost is the pressure of accountability, and then second of all, I hope when they start to see results of things like we started to see, that they'll realise that by investing it will make a difference. So I think we're going in the right direction. It takes a long time to create that sort of change, behaviour change, thinking change. But what now we kind of keep sort of saying is that is aware that the pressure is there and the visibility of the issues are there.
Ebony herself was a major factor in that visibility with her famous piece on Sky Sports alongside Michael Holding. But how in 2021 can we move the conversation beyond sharing trauma to doing something about it?
100%, yeah. So for me, everything I keep talking about is action, and I'm almost over the kind of, this is an issue I've known, I've been aware forever. I'm sure many people feel that same emotion. And this summer has raised awareness, great. Now it's about action, and I think actually specifically around measurable action. So I would like to see results of different groups, how we're seeing more numbers getting involved, whether that's at coaching, board levels, grassroots, at all parts of the levels of the game. I want to see reports, ideally quarterly or annually or whatever it might be, sort of demonstrating what action is being taken and the difference it's making. I think a lot of things can be tracked, and without tracking and measuring, these things end up just sort of being loose, as in, we want to make a difference with this community. Okay, well, specifically, how many people have been engaged? Are they still engaged in the game? What's been happening sort of with their journey? I think you can really drill into some numbers and specifics about the actions. And I hope that we start to get more sort of reporting on what is taking place. So I'm specifically speaking about cricket, but I think, you look in the business world and more will now sort of say how many people have recruited from diverse backgrounds. Let's look at our organisations and see that progression exists. And you can measure a lot of that. So I think it's important that we get really focused about what's trying to be achieved and measurably what the success looked like, and then track it. Otherwise, it will just be more of creating awareness, but no real tangible change.
So, what do tangible change and measurable success look like for ACE?
So for everyone, it's different. I'm going to look at the game as a whole, and I think there's 3 P's that I'm looking at: power, performance and participation. So power for me, at the moment, the number is 0 in most of these columns, or pretty much all board members, directors of cricket, head coaches of academies, captains, in positions of power within our game, the number 0. So I think without shifting that, people making decisions, it doesn't work. I know the result I've had being able to be at Surrey, we've been able to create something like this quite quickly because we can bring the conversation up. So unless there are people in positions of power, nothing changes. Then when it comes to performance, how we look for talent at the moment, unfortunately, is the well-trodden paths that have existed for a long time. And I think programs like ACE, and hopefully other counties do their own version or other areas do, could go and look for talent in different areas and really develop and support through the system. So I think that performance piece, having coaches who can develop that talent to a high level is important. And then the participation, it's difficult in all sports, but you find access is always harder in lower socioeconomic areas. And unfortunately, that is a direct, often crossover with diverse communities as well. So more and more resource, great charity like Chance to Shine actually does a lot of work with street chance programs. Can we marry up and do work there and bring those young people through? So I think those 3 P's have to be explored. And actually the one that's most important that has zeros in it is the power position. I would like to see possibly some board members on county boards, on ECB boards, captains, head coaches. Until we see those people, I don't think we'll get sustainable change.
Players like Azim Rafiq and officials like Ismail Dawood and John Holder have gone public with their experiences of systemic racist discrimination by those in power. What needs to happen so that their experiences are not those of future generations?
I think we've seen ECB recently made an announcement about they're looking to have sort of independent, it's not quite a commission as such, but an independent body that's going to oversee a lot of this work and the new diversity and inclusion. And I think that independence is important because unfortunately within environments we get into echo chambers, and trying to make change with difficult issues, doing it kind of in your own house, sometimes you end up giving yourself the answer. So I think that independent piece with really good people, and it's sort of the case we've seen, as you mentioned, up at Yorkshire, sometimes needs the people to, from an outside perspective, to kind of have a China lens and unpick and understand. So, you know, I think we have to just be honest and open that we need sometimes support and outside influence from people who have worked in spaces where they can make a difference. But look, it's, you know, like a few sports in our country, unfortunately, we've got a long way to go to really opening up and dealing with some of the difficult issues. But it's possible, and I think that independence is vital to that.
Switching to on-field matters, I asked Ebony what she thought of England's men no longer taking the knee in support of the Black Lives Matter movement.
I sort of said at the time, I think taking a knee this summer was important. You know, I appreciate that it can't go on forever, so it's not me sort of saying take it forever. But I feel that a meaningful period would have been really helpful just in terms of keeping the conversation going. It was done during the West Indies series for a couple of matches, and then died away. And so from my perspective, if we want to change the consciousness of our fans and we had that platform, I would have liked to have seen it gone on longer. It didn't. And you know, I know people are going to have different views about it. I personally think this was the year that we could have really driven home the message, the game itself, how far we are from racial equality or opportunities. It would have made a really good sense to have done it for longer, but you know, we didn't. So look, I don't expect taking a knee to go on forever, I understand that, but what I do think is a meaningful period, a time where you can look back at history and say, maybe not a few games, but actually it was taken over the course of a summer to make a stand is important.
Ebony is one of a few high-profile cricket broadcasters of colour in the UK. But how important is it that there are more people of colour in the media, not just talking and writing, but making decisions?
What I've witnessed my whole journey, I guess, and often, and now talking about sporting and media and stuff like that, is that there is that massive lack of power, decision makers, influencers, whether it's behind the camera or whether it's in the boardroom or wherever it might be. And without that lens to be able to look at and create opportunities and understand different types of people and make sure they're catered for, it's almost just, like I say, it's kind of almost missing huge sections of communities and populations and opportunities. So that's what I hope changes as a result of the movement that we saw in this last year, is that no longer is it okay to have a bit of visibility here and there in the front face and that's okay. Actually, you start to really analytically unpick and look at the structures and the systems and actually ask questions as well. Is it easy? Is it not easy, but is it possible for people from different backgrounds to move through? So, you know, I feel like 2020 was a foundation year for England specifically, getting our heads around the need for racial opportunities and equalities. I hope now 2021 is the year everyone really gets on board and really drives change.
It is tempting to wallow in nostalgia, in the feats of bygone greats like Sobers and the Pace Quartets. It is tempting to ask, where did it all go wrong? But it is absolutely vital that the story of black cricketers and black cricket fans in England and the rest of the United Kingdom is told not in the past tense, not preserved in aspic or behind glass, but is told in the present and, most importantly, the future tenses.